Hello guys, welcome to Pika Fiction. So in this video, we will see what if Ash met a human Latias again and she demanded to be his Pokemon bride. If you enjoy these kinds of stories, don't forget to show us some love by hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel. Your support means the world to us. Now, let's start the story. Chapter 1, The Promise in Alto Mare. The roar of the crowd was a physical force, a wave of sound that vibrated through the reinforced plasteel of the announcer's booth high above the Winden Stadium battlefield. Below, under the glare of 1,000 hololights, the final moments of the exhibition match played out not as a contest, but as a symphony. Ash Ketchum, standing calm and centered in the Monarch's box, had not spoken a word in nearly 3 minutes. He didn't need to. His Lucario moved like a whisper of blue and black, a phantom of focused steel. It weaved under a colossal dragon pulse from Raihan's Duraludon, the attack gouging a molten trench in the Duracrete field where Lucario had been a fraction of a second before. There was no shouted command, no panicked cry. There was only a shared thought, a flicker of intent that passed between trainer and Pokemon like an electrical current. Now. Lucario's palm sparked. An aura sphere, blindingly bright, wasn't thrown. It was held, compressed, its power building until the very air around it seemed to warp. Duraludon, a living skyscraper of chrome and fury, braced for the impact, its metallic body glowing as it prepared a counterattack. The sphere never came. Instead, Lucario slammed its glowing palm into the ground. The field erupted. A shockwave of pure aura, not aimed at Duraludon, but at the unstable earth beneath it from the earlier dragon pulse. The ground fractured. Duraludon, for all its immense power, lost its footing for a critical, jarring second. Its counter dissipated. And in that second, Lucario was already moving, a blur of motion that ended with it standing directly before the giant, one steel-tipped fist drawn back. The compressed aura sphere, still held in its other palm, was driven not as a projectile, but as a point-blank detonator into Duraludon's chest. The resulting explosion was a contained, muffled whump of energy that lifted the half-ton Pokemon a foot off the ground before it crashed back down, unconscious. The silence that followed was more profound than the roar that preceded it. Then, the stadium erupted. Ash gave a small, appreciative nod. On his shoulder, Pikachu's ears, which had been perked in high alert, relaxed. A low, satisfied Pika rumbled in his chest. Ash reached up and scratched his partner behind the ears, a gesture so practiced it was subconscious. And there you have it, folks, the announcer's voice boomed, finally breaking the spell. A flawless victory for World Monarch Ash Ketchum. A masterclass in strategy, proving once again that the bond he shares with his Pokemon operates on a level we can barely comprehend. Ash offered a wave to the adoring crowd, a genuine smile on his face, and then gave a respectful bow toward Raihan, who was already recalling his Duraludon with a wry, impressed shake of his head. The formalities were important. The respect was real. But for Ash, the battle was the truth, and the truth was in the perfect, silent understanding he shared with his team. 20 minutes later, he was in the press hall, a sanitized, brilliantly lit room packed with reporters from every network in the world. The lights were hot, the questions were rapid fire, but Ash, now 22, handled it with an ease that belied the chaotic energy of his youth. He wore a simple, dark gray jacket over a black shirt, a modern, understated uniform befitting his station. The brash, loud kid from Pallet Town was still in there, buried under layers of experience, but the man who stood at the podium was a leader. Monarch Ketchum, a reporter from the Hoenn Chronicle, began, another incredible display. Is it true you and Lucario have developed a form of nonverbal communication? It's not a special technique, Ash replied, his voice calm and clear, easily carrying over the din, it's just trust. When you've been through enough battles together, you start to know what the other is thinking. Lucario feels the flow of the battle, I feel it, and we both know what needs to be done. It's a partnership, that's all. On his shoulder, Pikachu flicked an ear, scanning the crowd with intelligent, dark eyes. He was no longer just a mascot, he was a silent guardian, his posture radiating a quiet confidence that mirrored his trainer's. Another reporter, this one from the Galar Observer, pushed forward, her tone sharper. "Monarch, your influence is undeniable. You command the most powerful Pokémon, you have unrestricted global access, and the League follows your lead. Some critics argue that's too much power for one individual. They say you represent an unacceptable risk, a single point of failure for global security. How do you respond to that?" The room quieted. This was the loaded question, the political jab disguised as journalism. The old Ash might have gotten defensive, maybe even angry. The new Ash simply met her gaze, his expression unchanging. "Power isn't the issue," he said, his voice dropping slightly, drawing everyone in. "A tidal wave is powerful. A volcano is powerful. But they don't have intent. The only thing that matters is how power is used. My power, as you call it, comes from the bonds I have with my Pokémon. It's built on love and respect. As long as that's the foundation, there's no risk. The real risk comes from people who seek power for its own sake, who see Pokémon not as partners, but as tools. I'm here to make sure that philosophy never wins." He let the statement hang in the air. It was a direct, confident answer that was also a veiled warning. The reporter had no follow-up. He had taken her argument and turned it into a declaration of his own core beliefs. A ripple of applause started from the back of the room. He answered a few more softballs about his training regimen and his plans for the next World Coronation Series season. He was just about to wrap it up when it hit him. It wasn't a sound. It was a feeling. A spike of ice-cold dread that shot through his mind, so sharp and sudden it made him gasp. It was followed by an image, a flash of memory, crystal-clear water canals, gondolas, and the scent of the sea. Alto Mare. The feeling intensified, coalescing into a single, silent scream. A scream of pure, undiluted fear. It was faint, stretched thin across a vast distance, but he recognized the signature. The psychic resonance. It was a voice he hadn't felt in years, a voice he thought he'd never feel again. Latias. Ash's hand went to his temple. The water bottle in his other hand slipped, clattering to the floor. The press room chatter faded into a dull roar. On his shoulder, Pikachu's fur bristled, and a low, worried spark crackled from his cheek. He felt it too. "Pikapi," he chirped, nudging Ash's face with his own. I have to go," Ash said, his voice suddenly tight. He stepped back from the podium, his public-facing composure evaporating, replaced by a raw, urgent focus. "The press conference is over." He turned and walked off the stage, ignoring the sudden clamor of confused questions from the reporters. Leon, the former monarch and his good friend, was waiting in the wings, a grin on his face that quickly faded when he saw Ash's expression. "Ash? What's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost." "Something like that," Ash managed, his mind racing. The psychic cry echoed, weaker now, but still insistent. A plea. "Leon, I need to leave. Now." Leon didn't question him. He'd known Ash long enough to recognize the shift from world monarch to something more primal, more urgent. This was the Ash who dove headfirst into world-ending crises without a second thought. "What do you need?" "A flight. Unrestricted airspace, direct route. No questions asked." "Done. Where to?" Ash met his friend's gaze, the gravity of the situation settling in his gut like a cold stone. Alto Mare. The Galar League's private jet was a marvel of engineering, a sleek, hypersonic craft that cut through the upper atmosphere like a silver needle. Inside, the luxury was wasted on Ash. He sat in a plush leather seat, staring out the window at the endless blue arch of the earth below, his knee bouncing with anxious energy. Pikachu sat on the console in front of him, uncharacteristically quiet, his gaze fixed on his trainer. It had been nearly a decade. A decade since he'd been a brash, overeager kid who stumbled into a city of secrets. A decade since he'd met the Ian Pokemon, Latias and Latios. A decade since he'd watched Latios sacrifice himself to become the new Soul Dew, saving the city from a cataclysmic tsunami. He'd never forgotten. The weight of that sacrifice, the image of Latios's spirit fading into the glowing orb, was seared into his memory. He had felt Latias's grief then, a psychic wound that had left him aching for days. He had also felt her gratitude. They had shared a connection, a bond forged in crisis. Why was she calling to him now? And why did her call feel so desperate? So terrified? He closed his eyes, trying to focus on the faint psychic thread. It was like listening for a whisper in a hurricane. Frayed. Weak. But underneath the fear, there was something else. A resolve. A plea that was also a demand. It made no sense. "Something is very, very wrong, buddy," Ash murmured, his voice barely audible over the hum of the engines. Pikachu agreed, his little paw resting on Ash's arm. As the jet began its descent, the familiar sight of Alto Mare filled the window. The city was as beautiful as he remembered, a jewel of old-world architecture crisscrossed by shimmering canals. From this height, it was serene, peaceful. A perfect postcard. But the psychic dread that had been a faint whisper was now a constant, low hum in the back of his mind. The beauty of the city felt like a mask, hiding a sickness he couldn't yet see. He didn't wait for the transport crew. The moment the jet touched down at the small, private airstrip, Ash was up, the emergency hatch hissing open at his command. He and Pikachu hit the tarmac at a run, ignoring the confused shouts of the ground staff. He knew where to go. The memory was ingrained in him. Through the winding alleys, over the picturesque bridges, he moved with a purpose that made tourists and locals alike step out of his way. He wasn't a celebrity here, just a man on a mission, a blur of motion against the placid backdrop of the city. He found the hidden gate, tucked away behind an overgrown trellis, and slipped through it. The change was immediate and sickening. The secret garden of Alto Mare was dying. The vibrant flowers he remembered were brown and withered. The lush grass was patchy and yellowed. The air, which should have been alive with the scent of blossoms and fresh water, was heavy, stale, and cold. In the center of the garden, the fountain that housed the Soul Dew was the worst of it. The once pristine water was murky, almost cloudy, and the great, glowing orb at its heart, the light was almost gone. It pulsed with a weak, sickly luminescence, like the last embers of a dying fire. Floating listlessly beside it was Latios. Or a ghost of him. His draconic form was translucent, flickering in and out of existence as if he lacked the energy to maintain a physical presence. He turned his head slowly as Ash approached, his golden eyes filled with an ancient weariness. And then Ash saw her. Standing by the edge of the fountain was a young woman. She looked to be about his age, with auburn hair that fell to her shoulders and eyes the same deep, intelligent gold as Latios's. She wore a simple white sundress that seemed out of place in the decaying garden. He recognized her instantly, not from memory, but from the raw, psychic presence she radiated. It was her. The source of the call. Her human form, no longer a temporary illusion, but a solid, tangible presence. "Bianca," Ash breathed. She turned to face him fully. There were no tears on her face, no outward sign of panic. Her expression was one of absolute, terrifying seriousness. Her gaze was so intense it felt like a physical weight. "You came," she said. Her voice was soft, but it held a strange, formal cadence, as if she were translating from a language far older than human speech. "I felt your call," Ash said, walking closer, his eyes flicking from her to the fading Soul Dew and the spectral Latios. "What's happening? Bianca, what's wrong?" "He is fading," she said, gesturing to her brother. "And the Dew with him. The sacrifice he made, it was a temporary solution. A graft of a single soul onto the heart of our lineage. But a single soul cannot sustain it forever. It is being consumed. Latios let out a weak, mournful cry that echoed directly in Ash's mind. The energy, it unravels. The heart is cold. Consumed by what? Ash asked, his hand instinctively balling into a fist. Is someone attacking you? Not a person. Time, Bianca said, her gaze fixed on the dying orb. And an imbalance. The world's energy is chaotic. Unstable. It poisons the dew. It accelerates the decay. She finally looked back at him, her golden eyes boring into his. My brother's essence is almost gone. When he fades completely, the soul dew will die. And when it dies, I will die with it. Our lineage will end. Ash's blood ran cold. He looked at the powerful, beautiful creature before him, and for the first time, he saw the depth of her fear, hidden behind a wall of grim resolve. There has to be a way to fix it, he said, his voice firm. We can find another legendary, maybe Palkia or Dialga. You do not understand, she interrupted, taking a step toward him. This cannot be fixed by outside power. It is a wound in the soul. An ancient pact dictates the remedy. A new soul dew cannot be found. It must be forged. Forged? How? Bianca took a deep breath, steeling herself. It requires a bond. A permanent fusion. The heart of a human, pure and strong, woven into the soul of an Aeon. It is a ritual of creation, a life binding. The Aeon vow. Ash stared at her, trying to process the mystical weight of her words. A fusion of a human heart and an Aeon soul. It sounded terrifying, impossible. A human, who? She took another step, closing the distance between them until she was standing just a few feet away. Her expression was unwavering, her intent absolute. I have searched the world with my heart, seeking a partner whose spirit is strong enough, whose aura is bright enough to withstand the fusion. I found only one. Her golden eyes locked onto his. I have chosen you, Ash Ketchum. The word struck him with the force of a physical blow. Him. He was just a trainer. A human. What she was describing was on a cosmic scale he couldn't begin to fathom. You will be my partner, she declared, her voice resonating with an ancient power that made the air hum. My bridegroom. The word landed in the silence of the garden with the weight of a dropped stone. Bridegroom. It was archaic, bizarre. It was clear from her delivery that it wasn't a romantic proposal. It was a title, a role, a component in a mystical equation she was trying to solve. She understood the concept of a partner, a bonded pair, only through the lens of her ancient lore. Before Ash could even begin to form a response, to the shock, the impossibility, the sheer absurdity of the demand, a piercing shriek cut through the air. It wasn't psychic. It was mechanical. Latios let out a sharp cry of pain, his form flickering violently. The dew. It burns. Ash spun around. A new object was hovering over the fountain. It was a drone, but like nothing he had ever seen. It was about the size of a large dog, crafted from a matte black, non-reflective alloy. It had no visible rotors or jets, hovering in complete silence. A thin, needle-like probe extended from its underbelly, submerged in the cloudy water of the soul dew. A sickening, faint violet light was pulsing from the probe, and the water around it was boiling, siphoning the last vestiges of the dew's energy. It hadn't been there a moment ago. It must have been cloaked. This was no accident. This was an attack. The time for questions was over. The time for shock was over. This was a battlefield. Ash's entire being snapped into focus. Pikachu. He didn't need to say another word. With a furious cry of Pikachu, his partner leaped from his shoulder. Yellow lightning, thick and brilliant, erupted from his body, a spear of pure electrical fury aimed not at the drone's body, but at the delicate probe. It was a perfect, tactical strike. The lightning bolt hit the probe with a deafening crackle. The drone convulsed in mid-air, its silent hover failing. Alarms, high-pitched and alien, blared from its chassis. It wobbled, smoke pouring from its joints, and then crashed into the stone pavers of the garden. Ash ran to it, skidding to a halt a safe distance away. It was already starting to glow from within, a bright, internal heat building. "Get back," he yelled to Bianca. The drone didn't explode. It imploded. With a sound like a giant sigh, it collapsed in on itself, dissolving into a pile of superheated, gray dust and twisted, unrecognizable components. A clean, efficient self-destruct sequence. No evidence. No traceable parts. Ash stared at the smoldering remains, his mind racing. This wasn't Team Rocket. Their tech was clumsy, loud, ostentatious. This was quiet, sophisticated, military-grade. Someone else was after the Soul Dew. Someone with resources and technology far beyond that of any criminal syndicate he had ever faced. He turned back to Bianca. The brief surge of energy from the drone's attack had nearly extinguished the Soul Dew. Latios was now barely visible, a faint shimmer in the air. The garden felt colder than ever. The full weight of the situation finally crashed down on him. A dying legendary. A mystical pact requiring his heart. And a technologically advanced, unknown enemy who was actively trying to steal what little power was left. Latios's voice entered his mind, weaker than ever, a mere thread of thought. "She speaks the truth, chosen one. The vow, it is the only way. They are hunting us. They are not like the ones before. They are cold. Empty." Ash looked from the pile of dust to the fading Latios, then to Bianca. Her face was pale, but her jaw was set. She wasn't asking him. She was telling him the facts of her reality, a reality that had just violently intersected with his own. The bridegroom title was still a foreign, jarring concept, a problem for another time. But the core of her request, stripped of its strange terminology, was a plea for help. And Ash Ketchum never turned his back on a friend in need. He walked back to her, his expression now as serious as hers. He stood before her, the world monarch, the hero, the trainer. But in his eyes, there was only the boy who had made a promise in this very garden a decade ago. "I don't understand everything about this vow, Bianca," he said, his voice low and steady, a rock in the swirling chaos. "And I don't know what it means to be a bridegroom in your world. But I understand that you're in trouble. That you're my friends." He looked over at the fading image of Latios and a deep, unshakable resolve settled in his soul. "I made a promise to your brother. I promised I'd never forget him. I'm not going to break that promise by letting his sister die." He met her golden eyes, and for the first time, he saw a flicker of something other than fear and determination. It was a fragile spark of hope. "I'll protect you," Ash said, the words themselves a vow. "We'll find a way to restore the Soul Dew. We'll find out who sent that drone and we will stop them." He took a final breath, sealing his commitment. "We'll do it together." In the dying garden of Alto Mare, under the shadow of a new and unknown threat, a new promise was made. The path forward was shrouded in mystery and danger, but it was a path he would now walk. He had given his word. Chapter 2, Echoes of Power, Whispers of Doubt. The promise hung in the cold, decaying air of the secret garden, a single point of warmth in a world gone gray. Ash's words, "We'll do it together," were an anchor for Bianca. She watched him, this human who stood unbowed before a crisis of gods and myths, and felt a flicker of an emotion her kind had no name for. It was more than gratitude, deeper than trust. It was a resonance, a feeling that his spirit was a tuning fork for her own. Together, she repeated softly, the word feeling foreign but right on her tongue. Action replaced stillness. "Latios," Ash said, turning to the shimmering, translucent form of her brother. "You said the ancient stones sing. Where are they? I need a location." Something I can track. Latios's form wavered, a great effort will required for even this simple communication. A series of images, fragmented and dreamlike, bloomed in Ash's mind. A colossal mountain that pierced the clouds, its peak a jagged spear of black rock perpetually crowned in snow. A dense, primeval forest clinging to its slopes. And deep within, a circle of moss-covered megaliths that seemed to hum with a silent, powerful music. It was a memory from a time before time. Sin no, Ash thought instantly. Empty coronet. Okay, he said aloud, turning back to Bianca. I know the place. But we can't take a jet. That drone wasn't a random encounter. Whoever they are, they're watching. They'll be tracking official transport, especially mine. He pulled a small, rugged-looking device from his belt, a heavily encrypted personal comms unit. He keyed in a code, bypassing standard networks for a direct, champion-level channel. A moment later, a familiar, calm voice answered. Cynthia. Ash. Your press conference ended, abruptly. Leon said you had an emergency. Is everything all right? Not even close, Ash said, his voice low. Listen, I don't have time to explain everything. I'm in Alto Mare. I need you to do something for me, no questions asked. There was a brief pause. Of course. What is it? Pull up all geological and archaeological data on M. Coronet. Specifically, any prehistoric sites, ruins, anything that doesn't fit the standard timeline. I'm looking for a place the old legends call the Heart of the Mountain. A place of immense natural energy. The Heart of the Mountain, Cynthia mused, her voice sharp with academic curiosity even in the face of urgency. Most consider that a myth, a metaphor for the spear pillar. But there are older texts, apocryphal Sin-no creation myths. They speak of a first cradle, a place where the world's life force was once concentrated. I'll start digging. Where can I send the data? Don't send it, Ash countered. Just be ready. I'll contact you when I'm there. And Cynthia? Keep this off all official league channels. This is sensitive. Understood, Ash. Be careful. The line went dead. Ash clipped the device back to his belt. All right. We fly ourselves. He looked at Bianca, a new problem dawning on him. Can you travel that far? In your human form? Bianca's brow furrowed. As Latias, she could cross continents in the blink of an eye, a streak of red and white against the sky. As a human, the concept of distance was alien. I don't know. I feel heavy. The connection to the dew is weak. It's like trying to run in deep water. Then you're not flying under your own power, Ash said decisively. He pulled a poke ball from his belt. We'll need someone strong, someone who can handle the altitude and the distance. With a flash of red light, his Charizard materialized on the stone pavers, its sheer size seeming to shrink the already dying garden. It let out a ground-shaking roar, a plume of smoke curling from its nostrils, then it turned its head and nudged Ash affectionately, the gesture almost comical given its formidable presence. Bianca took an involuntary step back. She had seen countless Pokémon, even battled them, but the raw, physical power of a creature like Charizard, standing so close, was viscerally different in her human form. It wasn't a threat, but it was an overwhelming presence. It's okay, Ash said, patting Charizard's thick, scaly neck. He's an old friend. He'll get us there safely. Before they left, Bianca walked to the fountain. She reached out, her fingers hesitating just above Latios's flickering form. She couldn't touch him, not anymore. Be safe, she projected, her thought a fragile prayer. The light, it is in you now, sister, he replied, his voice a fading echo. Do not let it go out. With a final, sorrowful look at the dimming soul dew, she turned to Ash, her face a mask of resolute grief. I am ready. The ascent was brutal. Charizard climbed with powerful, rhythmic beats of his massive wings, punching through the clouds into the freezing, thin air of the upper atmosphere. Ash, clad in a flight suit he kept for just such occasions, was in his element, his body braced against the wind, his hand resting on Charizard's neck in a silent communion. Bianca was not. She sat behind Ash, her arms wrapped tightly around his waist, her face pressed into his back to shield it from the biting wind. As Latias, the sky was her home. As a human, it was a terrifying, hostile void. The cold was a physical pain, seeping through her simple dress and into her bones. The sheer velocity was disorienting, a constant, roaring pressure that made her head swim. She was a goddess of the sky, reduced to a shivering, terrified passenger. Pika. Pikachu, nestled securely inside Ash's jacket, poked his head out, his expression worried. He saw Bianca trembling. Ash felt it too. He twisted around slightly, his voice raised to be heard over the wind. Hang on. He unzipped a pouch on his belt and pulled out a tightly packed, silver-foiled bundle. He unfurled it with one hand, a high-tech thermal cloak, thin as silk but designed to reflect body heat and block wind. With practiced movements, he maneuvered it around her, wrapping it tightly over her shoulders and tucking the edges in. The effect was instantaneous. The biting cold lessened, replaced by a pocket of her own trapped warmth. It was a small gesture, a practical solution to a practical problem, but for Bianca, it was profound. He hadn't asked. He had just seen her need and met it. She tightened her grip, a silent thank you, and buried her face in the warmth of his back. They flew for hours, a tiny, determined speck against the vast canvas of the world. Below, oceans and continents drifted by in a slow, majestic procession. For the first time, Ash had a chance to let the reality of his situation sink in. The world monarch, the most public figure in the Pokémon world, was now a fugitive, flying under the radar with a legendary Pokémon in human form to a mythical location to stop an unknown, technologically superior enemy from. What? What was their goal? The drone wasn't just siphoning energy. Latios had said it burned. It was an invasive, destructive process. They weren't just thieves, they were poison. Why you? Bianca's voice was a muffled question against his jacket. What do you mean? The vow, she said. My lore says the human heart must be unwavering in the face of despair, yet open to the song of the world. It says the aura must be a fire that warms, not burns. I sent my heart out, searching for a spirit that matched. I touched thousands. Millions. Most were quiet. Small, contained flames. Some were bright but brittle. Some were vast but cold. Then I found yours. She paused, struggling to put an infinite concept into finite words. It wasn't just a fire. It was a sun. A nexus. Thousands of other lights were connected to it, your Pokémon, your friends. They all orbited you. It was, the only one. The only one strong enough. Ash was silent for a long moment, the wind whipping past them. A sun. A nexus. He'd never thought of himself that way. He was just a guy who loved Pokémon and tried to do the right thing. That light you felt, he finally said, his voice thoughtful. It's not mine. It's theirs. Pikachu, Charizard, all of them. Everything I am because of them. If you chose me, you chose all of us. Yes, she whispered, a hint of wonder in her voice. That is what the texts never explained. The strength isn't from the one. It is from the many that are one. They landed as dusk painted the sky in shades of orange and violet. Charizard, tired but resolute, touched down in a clearing deep within a sprawling forest at the base of Mount Coronet. The air was crisp and smelled of pine and damp earth. Ash immediately set to work, gathering fallen branches for a fire while Pikachu scouted the perimeter. His movements were efficient, born of years spent camping in the wild. Bianca slid off Charizard's back, her legs unsteady. She stumbled, her body unaccustomed to the simple act of standing on solid ground after so long in the air. She looked around at the towering trees, the deepening shadows, the foreign sounds of the wilderness. This was his world. A world of physical limits, of cold and hunger and exhaustion. Ash got a small, controlled fire going. The crackle of the flames and the dancing light pushed back the encroaching darkness. He pulled out some nutrient-rich ration bars and a canteen of water, offering one to her. She took the bar, looking at the dense, brown rectangle with suspicion. She nibbled at a corner. The taste was chalky, bland, but she felt a strange sensation as her body processed it, a dulling of the ache of hunger, a small return of strength. It was another bizarre facet of this human form. It needed fuel. "Is this what your life is like?" she asked, her voice quiet, mesmerized by the fire. "Always moving. Always fighting." "Sometimes," Ash replied, sitting across the fire from her. Charizard was already asleep nearby, his tail twitching as he dreamt. "But it's not all fighting. It's seeing new places, meeting new people, new Pokémon. It's..." He trailed off, trying to find the right words. "It's about getting stronger, together. Every battle, win or lose, you learn something. About your Pokémon, about your opponent, about yourself." He looked at her, his expression serious. "That's how we're going to beat these guys. We're going to learn them, and we're going to get stronger than them." A twig snapped in the darkness beyond the firelight. Instantly, Ash was on his feet. Pikachu was a blur, leaping to his shoulder, cheeks sparking. The relaxed atmosphere of the camp evaporated, replaced by a sudden, razor-sharp tension. The forest, which had been alive with the chirps of nocturnal Pokémon, had gone utterly, unnaturally silent. "What is it?" Bianca whispered, rising as well. "We're being watched," Ash said, his eyes scanning the impenetrable wall of blackness that surrounded them. Then, the world went dead. The crackle of the fire, the whisper of the wind, the sound of his own breathing, it all vanished. A perfect, profound silence descended like a lead blanket. A sound-dampening field. Ash's heart hammered in his chest. This was tech he'd never encountered, but its purpose was clear: to isolate, to disorient, to prevent him from shouting commands. A shimmer in the air by a massive pine tree resolved into a human-shaped figure. They were clad head to toe in a seamless, matte gray tactical suit that seemed to absorb the firelight. Their face was obscured by a smooth, featureless helmet. There was no insignia, no identifying marks. It was a ghost, a sterile instrument of combat. This was Spectre. 2 pokeballs were thrown, not with an arc, but with a sharp, linear precision. They opened without a sound, releasing a sleek, predatory weevil and a punkrocker Toxtricity. Its vibrant purple and yellow form a jarring splash of color in the monochrome scene. But something was wrong with them. The weevil's claws weren't just sharp, they hummed with a faint, blue energy. The Toxtricity wore a complex-looking collar that glowed with the same violet light Ash had seen on the drone's probe in Alto Mare. Bianca felt it first. She tried to reach out with her mind, to gauge the threat, to shield Ash. The moment she did, a lance of pure agony shot through her skull. It was like running headfirst into a psychic brick wall. She cried out, stumbling back, clutching her head as the Toxtricity's collar flared. Psychic jammers. They had come prepared for her. Ash didn't hesitate. He couldn't speak, but he didn't need to. He met Charizard's gaze and jabbed a finger forward. The massive Pokémon, awake and furious, needed no other command. He unleashed a torrent of fire. The flamethrower was a roaring inferno that should have incinerated everything in its path. But Spectre moved. They didn't dodge, they flowed. A flicker of motion, a ripple in the air as their light-bending camouflage engaged, and they were gone. The weevil was even faster. It became a black and red blur, darting under the stream of fire and lunging not at Charizard, but at Ash. Protect Ash. The thought was a silent scream from Bianca. Charizard, seeing the immediate threat to his trainer, aborted his attack and brought a massive claw down. Weevil was impossibly agile, dancing back from the blow and retaliating with a night slash. The humming blue energy of its claws met Charizard's scales with a shower of sparks and a sickening sound of scraping metal. These weren't normal claws. They were designed to disrupt and damage. At the same time, the Toxtricity strummed the protrusions on its chest. A wave of discordant sound washed over them. It wasn't just loud, it felt wrong. It vibrated in Ash's bones, and he could see Bianca flinch, the psychic jamming intensifying under the sonic assault. Ash knew he was outclassed technologically. He needed his best fighters. He recalled the embattled Charizard and, in a fluid motion, threw 2 more Pokeballs. His Infernape and Sceptile burst forth, landing in low, battle-ready stances. The silent battle began in earnest. Ash used hand signals, gestures he and his Pokémon had perfected over years of fighting in loud stadiums and chaotic environments. Sceptile, a green streak of lightning, engaged the Weevil. Leaf Blade met Humming Claw in a rapid-fire exchange of blows. Sceptile was fast, one of the fastest Pokémon Ash had ever trained, but the Weevil matched it, its movements economical and brutally efficient. Infernape, a whirlwind of furious fire, charged the Toxtricity. It met the charge with a blast of overdrive, the sound-based attack throwing Infernape back. The collar on its neck flared, and Ash felt another wave of psychic dissonance, even though he wasn't a psychic himself. The technology was polluting the very air. It was a losing fight. Every move Ash made, Spectre had a counter. Every display of his Pokémon's power was met with a tactical, technological shutdown. Sceptile was being worn down by Weevil's energy-laced attacks. Infernape couldn't get close to the Toxtricity without being hammered by disorienting sound waves. And Bianca was effectively neutralized, on her knees, her face pale with pain as she fought the psychic jamming. Spectre hadn't moved an inch. They simply stood there, observing, their head tilting slightly as they analyzed the battle. This wasn't a fight for them. It was a data-gathering exercise. They were gauging the World Monarch's limits. Frustration and fury burned in Ash's chest. He saw Bianca struggling, saw his Pokémon fighting a battle they couldn't win. He had to change the rules. He made a split-second decision that seemed like madness. With quick hand signals, he recalled both Infernape and Sceptile. The battlefield fell silent, save for the hum of Weevil's claws. Now it was just him, a trembling Bianca, and a single, small Pikachu against 2 technologically augmented opponents and a ghost in tactical gear. Spectre's posture shifted slightly, the first sign of what might have been surprise. This was an illogical move. Ash looked at Bianca. He saw her pain, her helplessness. And in that moment, his desperation found a new focus. It wasn't about winning anymore. It was about survival. He knelt beside her, putting a hand on her shoulder. Pikachu stood protectively in front of them, his body thrumming with stored electricity, a tiny, defiant sentinel. Bianca looked up at him, her golden eyes swimming with pain and frustration. She was a legendary. A being of immense power. And she was useless. She saw the grim determination in Ash's eyes, the way he put himself between her and the danger, armed with nothing but a Pikachu. A new thought, sharp and clear, cut through her pain. She couldn't project her power outward. The jammers were a wall. But what if she didn't try to break the wall? What if she just opened a door? She reached out, not with a blast of psychic energy, but with a fragile, desperate tendril of thought, aimed only at Ash. Let me help. Don't look. See. See what I see. It wasn't a command. It was an invitation. A plea. For a split second, Ash hesitated. Then, trusting the same instinct that guided him in battle, he opened his mind. He let go. The world shattered. It was not a sight, but a complete sensory immersion. The forest floor vanished, replaced by a flowing tapestry of energy. He felt the life force of the trees, the cool, dormant energy of the earth beneath him. The fire was a roaring, joyful ball of heat and light. His own body and Pikachu's were steady, warm flames of aura. And the enemy, they were jagged holes in the fabric of the world. Spectre was a void, their suit absorbing all energy, leaving a human-shaped patch of nothingness. The Weevil was a chaotic vortex of malice and speed. The Toxtricity was a discordant shriek of corrupted power. And the Jammers, he could see them now. 3 small, cloaked discs hovering in the trees, emitting concentric rings of crushing psychic silence. They were the source of Bianca's pain. The sensory input was a tidal wave. It should have crippled him. But it didn't. Anchoring him, at the very center of the storm, was the warm, familiar, unwavering light of his bond with Pikachu. That bond was his bedrock, the eye of the hurricane. He could see it all. The vectors of attack. The subtle shifts in weight. The build-up of energy. He saw the world through the eyes of a god. Spectre, misinterpreting his stillness as surrender, made a gesture. The Weevil lunged. To the naked eye, it was an undodgeable blur. But to Ash's new senses, it was a slow, predictable arc. He didn't speak. He didn't have to. A single thought, a flicker of pure intent, flashed to his partner. Pikachu. Up. Now. Pikachu fired a thunderbolt, not at the Weevil, but straight up at a thick branch directly above Spectre. The branch splintered, raining heavy wood down on the operative, forcing them to move for the first time. The Weevil, its handler momentarily distracted, faltered in its attack. Left. Ricochet. Pikachu, already moving, fired a second thunderbolt at the metallic trunk of a petrified tree. The bolt screamed off the surface at a perfect angle, streaking through the woods and striking one of the hidden psychic jammers. It exploded with a shower of sparks. The crushing pressure in Bianca's head lessened by a third. She gasped, a breath of clean air after being held underwater. Spectre recovered, their posture now radiating cold fury. This was no longer an analysis. This was an extermination. They pointed at Ash. Weevil and Toxtricity charged simultaneously. Iron Tail. Ground. Now. Pikachu spun, his tail glowing like forged steel, and slammed it into the earth. Dirt, rocks, and leaf litter exploded outwards in a massive cloud, a primitive smokescreen. In the chaos, the Toxtricity unleashed a boom burst, a wave of pure sound meant to shatter everything in the clearing. But Ash, guided by Bianca's senses, felt the vibration before the sound even formed. Under it, Buddy. Pikachu dug in, the sonic blast harmlessly washing over his low profile. Through the dust, Ash could see the heat signature of the Weevil, circling around for a flanking attack. He saw the path it would take, the exact spot it would emerge from the dust cloud. He whispered a single word, the sound swallowed by the lingering silence. Volt Tackle. Pikachu became a comet of pure electricity. He burst from the smokescreen on a perfect intercept course. The Weevil, expecting a cowering target, had no time to react. The Volt Tackle hit it dead center, a cataclysmic impact of raw power. The Weevil was thrown back, crashing into the Toxtricity, and both collapsed in a tangled, sparking heap. The battlefield fell silent once more. The dust settled. Only Spectre remained standing, their 2 Pokémon incapacitated. For a long moment, the void-like figure just stood there. Then, they slowly raised a hand to their wrist. Ash tensed, ready for another attack, but there was none. A strange, shimmering distortion, like heat haze on a summer road, began to warp the air around Spectre. It was a localized temporal event, a technology so advanced it bordered on magic. They were erasing themselves from the moment. As their form began to fade, a synthesized voice, devoid of all emotion, echoed not in the air, but directly in Ash's mind, bypassing the sound-dampening field entirely. Subject: World Monarch Ketchum. Power level exceeds projections. Subject: Anomaly Bianca. Integration with human subject is an uncatalogued capability. Threat level upgraded. Analysis complete. The Foundation is proceeding. And then they were gone. The sound of the world rushed back in. The crackle of the fire, the chirping of insects, the wind in the pines. The remaining jamming devices fell from the trees, deactivated. The sensory link between Ash and Bianca snapped. Ash cried out and stumbled, the sudden absence of the sensory flood as jarring as its arrival. The world seemed dull, muted, a pale imitation of what he had just experienced. His head throbbed, and a wave of vertigo washed over him. Ash. Bianca was at his side in an instant, her earlier weakness forgotten. She supported him, her arm around his shoulders, holding him steady. The roles were reversed. He had shielded her, now she was his anchor. He leaned on her, taking deep, shuddering breaths. Did you hear that? The Foundation, she whispered, her eyes wide with a new kind of fear. It wasn't a name. It sounded like a concept. A force. He looked at the two unconscious Pokémon, at the scorch marks on the trees, at the spot where Spectre had vanished. They hadn't been trying to capture them. Not really. They had been testing them. Probing their defenses, cataloging their abilities. They had thrown a champion-level threat at him just to see how he would react. And they had learned his greatest new secret: his bond with Bianca could be turned into a weapon. They had won the fight. But in doing so, they had shown their hand to an enemy whose intelligence and resources were terrifyingly vast. A seed of doubt, cold and heavy, settled in Ash's stomach. He had made a promise to protect her, but for the first time in his life, he wasn't sure if it was a promise he could keep. He looked up, past the canopy of trees, toward the looming, snow-capped peak of Coronet. The ancient ruins, their last, best hope, were still waiting. But now, the path to them felt infinitely more dangerous. They were no longer just on a quest. They were being hunted. Chapter 3, The Gilded Cage. The first light of dawn was a pale, silver wash over the jagged peaks of Coronet. The air was thin and bitingly cold. Ash stood on a narrow ledge, the wind whipping his hair and jacket, staring out at the sprawling green blanket of the forest below. The clearing where they had been ambushed was an insignificant patch from this height, the memory of the battle a fresh, throbbing wound in his mind. Bianca stood a few feet away, her arms wrapped around herself. The thermal cloak was a small comfort against the alpine chill. Her human form, she was discovering, was a fragile thing, constantly at war with the elements. But the cold she felt now was more than physical. Spectre's parting words echoed in her thoughts: the Foundation is proceeding. It was a statement of inexorable, indifferent process. They were a problem to be solved, an anomaly to be corrected. They knew where we would be, she said, her voice quiet but clear over the wind. Not just the mountain. That clearing. They were waiting for us. Ash didn't turn. His gaze was fixed on the horizon, his mind a battlefield of calculations and grim possibilities. They didn't track us. If they could, they would have just shot us out of the sky. They predicted us. He finally turned to face her, his expression hard. I called Cynthia. A champion, using a secure channel. It's the only connection I've made to the outside world. They must have been monitoring her, or the League's high-level comms network. They knew I was looking for something on Coronet, so they set a trap. So we can't trust anyone? Bianca asked, the implication chilling. Your friend, Cynthia. No, Ash said, shaking his head with certainty. Cynthia is solid. But the system she's part of is compromised. This Foundation, they're not hiding in the shadows. They're woven into the fabric of the world. They have eyes and ears everywhere. He looked down at his own comms unit, a bitter frustration rising in him. His greatest strengths, his title, his connections, his reputation, had all become liabilities. Using them was like lighting a beacon for the enemy. They were alone, truly alone. What do we do now? Bianca's voice was small. The fierce resolve she'd shown in the garden had been tempered by the harsh reality of their enemy. She was a being of immense power, but she was a stranger in this world of secrets and betrayals. Ash's jaw tightened. The easy answer was to press on, to find the heart of the mountain and hope it held the solution. But Spectre's attack had changed the equation. It was a message. We see you. We are letting you run, for now. To continue on their current path was to walk deeper into a trap he couldn't see. We changed the game, he said, a new, dangerous light in his eyes. They want to hunt us in the shadows. Fine. We're dragging them into the light. He strode past her, back toward the small, sheltered cave where they had spent the rest of the night. Sceptile and Infernape were out of their pokeballs, standing guard, their pride still smarting from the previous night's forced retreat. Pikachu was perched on a rock, nibbling on a ration bar, but his eyes never stopped scanning their surroundings. They're using the system against us, Ash continued, his voice resonating with a sudden, fierce energy. My authority, my connections. So I'm going to use the system right back at them. I'm going to take away their cover. They want to call you an anomaly. I'm going to show the world who the real anomaly is. How? Bianca asked, following him. I'm the world monarch, he declared, the title no longer a liability, but a weapon he was about to wield. I have the authority to call an emergency session of the Global Pokémon League Council. All the champions, all the regional leaders, all in one room. I'm putting the Aegis Foundation on trial in front of the whole world. Bianca stared at him, stunned by the sheer audacity of the plan. But you said they were watching. If you do that, they'll know exactly where you are. They will come for you. Let them come, Ash said, his voice a low growl. I'm tired of running. I'm tired of hiding. Let them come to Lumio City, one of the most secure cities in the world, filled with every champion on the planet. Let's see them try something there. It was a colossal gamble. He was betting everything on his own authority and the hope that, when faced with undeniable truth, the leaders of the world would choose to do the right thing. He was betting that the gilded cage of politics could become his fortress. The journey to Lumio City was a high-stakes chess move. Ash knew any official transport was compromised. So he called in a favor not from the League, but from an old friend whose loyalty was absolute and whose methods were decidedly off the books. Within hours, a battered, unassuming cargo plane, ostensibly hauling machine parts from Sinnoh to Kalos, touched down on a remote, decommissioned airstrip miles outside the city. The pilot was a grizzled man with a familiar, sly grin. Looker, Ash said, relieved. Monarch, the International Police Agent replied with a tip of his trademark hat. Or should I say, Mr. Smith? Your passage has been arranged. The manifest says you're a mid-level parts inspector. Your research assistant here is cleared as well. He gave Bianca a quick, curious glance but asked no questions. Looker had seen stranger things. They were smuggled into Lumio City in the back of an unmarked delivery van, bypassing the grand, glittering boulevards for the grimy, labyrinthine service tunnels that ran beneath the city like a secret circulatory system. They emerged into the stark, concrete belly of the Lumios Conference Center, a world away from the gleaming prism tower that soared above. This is as far as I can take you, Looker said, handing Ash a small, featureless data chip. The remains of that drone from Alto Mare, and the energy signature from your battle on the mountain. Everything I could scrub from the network before it was wiped. It's not much, but it's proof. Good luck, Ash. The world is watching. With a final nod, He disappeared back into the shadows, leaving Ash and Bianca alone in the echoing silence of the service corridor. Research assistant? Bianca asked, a faint, wry smile touching her lips for the first time in days. The simple disguise felt absurd. It's the best I could come up with, Ash admitted. You need to be in the chamber with me, but they won't allow a friend. You're part of my official staff. Just stay quiet, look serious, and try not to psychically project that you think they're all idiots. She managed a small laugh, a sound that felt like a miracle in the tense, cold air. I will try. The Global Pokémon League Council Chamber was a marvel of modern architecture, a vast, circular room designed to inspire awe and project power. A ring of elevated platforms, one for each regional champion, surrounded a central floor where political leaders and aides sat. Above them, a 360-degree holoscreen displayed data, news feeds, and the faces of remote attendees. The air hummed with quiet, powerful conversation. It was a world away from the dirt and danger of the wilderness. It was a different kind of battlefield. Ash strode in, and the room fell silent. Every head turned. His sudden, unscheduled arrival had sent shockwaves through the political world. He took his place on the central, highest platform, the one reserved for the world monarch. Pikachu, as always, was on his shoulder, his presence a small, defiant spark of wildness in this sterile environment. Bianca, holding a datapad she didn't know how to use, stood a respectful step behind him, her heart pounding with a human anxiety she was still learning to process. Thank you all for attending on such short notice, Ash began, his voice amplified by the room's acoustics. It was steady, commanding, betraying none of the frantic urgency that had brought him here. I have not called this emergency session to discuss tournament schedules or regulatory changes. I have called you here because our world is facing a new, insidious threat, one that operates under the guise of philanthropy and security. He laid it all out. The attack on Alto Mare. The sophisticated, self-destructing drone. The death of the secret garden. The ambush on M. Coronet by a technologically superior operative. He didn't mention Latias or the Soul Dew by name, framing it as an attack on a site of historical and ecological importance. He played Looker's data on the main screen, the energy signatures, the fragmented schematics. This, Ash declared, his voice ringing with conviction, is the work of an organization calling itself the Aegis Foundation. A murmur went through the room. Some faces were confused. Others, Ash noted with a sinking feeling, were carefully, deliberately blank. The Aegis Foundation, a voice cut in, sharp and skeptical. It was Valerius, the champion of the Galar region. He sat on his platform with a languid, almost bored posture, dressed in an immaculate, custom-tailored suit that probably cost more than Ash's entire wardrobe. His silvery hair was perfectly coiffed, his handsome face set in an expression of cool disbelief. The same Aegis Foundation that just donated billions to rebuild the infrastructure damaged during the Eternatus incident. The same foundation that funds Pokémon sanctuaries across the globe. Ash, with all due respect, you're accusing one of the world's leading philanthropic bodies of being a rogue military force. I'm not accusing them, Valerius. I'm telling you what I saw, Ash retorted, his eyes locking with the Galar champions. The two had been rivals for years, a clash of styles and philosophies. Ash, the intuitive prodigy. Valerius, the cold, calculating strategist. You saw a drone and a mysterious assailant, Valerius countered, spreading his hands in a gesture of magnanimous reason. It could be anyone. A new criminal syndicate, corporate saboteurs, even a state-sponsored Black Ops team. To leap to the conclusion that it's the Aegis Foundation based on, what? A gut feeling? It's reckless. It's not a gut feeling, Ash shot back, his frustration growing. The operative I faced mentioned the Foundation by name. An operative you can't produce. In a remote location with no other witnesses, save for your assistant, Valerius said, his gaze flicking to Bianca for a split second with dismissive indifference. Ash, your history with legendary Pokemon is well documented. You have a personal connection to them that clouds your judgment. You see conspiracies where there are only isolated incidents. You see malice where there is only the unfortunate chaos of the world. The argument was masterful in its political cruelty. Valerius wasn't just questioning Ash's evidence, he was questioning his sanity, framing his greatest strength, his empathy for all Pokemon, as a weakness, a bias that made him an unreliable narrator. Bianca stood frozen, her knuckles white where she gripped the datapad. She could feel the currents in the room. The doubt. The skepticism. The cold, political calculation. These people weren't heroes. They were administrators. They were afraid of disrupting the status quo, of provoking a powerful entity that lined their pockets and solved their public relations problems. She wanted to scream, to show them who she was, to force them to see the truth. But that would only prove Valerius's point. It would make Ash look like a madman harboring a dangerous creature. She was trapped, silenced by the very rules of the game Ash was trying to play. Cynthia, from her platform, spoke up, her voice a calm counterpoint to the rising tension. Valerius, Ash's record speaks for itself. If he says he faced a significant threat, we should take him at his word. The energy signatures on this data chip are unlike anything I've ever seen. They warrant a full investigation. Stephen Stone, the Hoenn champion, nodded in agreement. I concur. This level of technology is destabilizing. We need to know who wields it. But they were in the minority. The other leaders shifted uncomfortably. The president of the Kalos region, a man whose election campaign had been heavily funded by Aegis subsidiaries, spoke for the first time. An investigation is one thing. A public condemnation is another. The Aegis Foundation is a global partner. We cannot afford to alienate them based on anecdotal evidence. I move to table this motion, pending a formal, and discreet, investigation by an independent committee. It was a political death sentence, and everyone knew it. Table the motion meant bury it. Ash felt the walls of the gilded cage closing in. He had walked into the lion's den, expecting to find allies, only to realize most of the lions were already tamed. And then he saw him. In the public gallery, seated amongst a crowd of aides and observers, was a man who did not belong. He was dressed in a simple but impeccably tailored suit, his bearing calm and centered amidst the political turmoil. He had silver-gray hair, a neatly trimmed beard, and eyes that were a startlingly pale blue, intelligent and intensely focused. He watched the proceedings not with the detached interest of an observer, but with the quiet confidence of a man watching his own plan unfold. As Valerius finished his eloquent dismissal of Ash's claims, the man in the gallery gave the Galar champion a single, almost imperceptible nod. A nod of approval. In that moment, Ash knew. He knew who the man was. He was the architect of this entire charade. You, Ash said, his voice dropping to a dangerous low. He pointed, not at Valerius, but at the man in the gallery. You're Silas Core. The name sent a new ripple through the chamber. Silas Core. The reclusive, enigmatic founder of the Aegis Foundation. He was a myth, a phantom who never made public appearances. Silas Core offered a serene, polite smile. He stood, and all eyes turned to him. He didn't seem surprised or cornered. He seemed pleased. Monarch Ketchum, he said, his voice calm and resonant, carrying easily through the chamber. It was a voice used to commanding attention. You have me at a disadvantage. It seems you know who I am. I know you tried to kill my friends, Ash snarled, all pretense of political decorum gone. Silas's expression turned to one of carefully crafted concern. Kill. My dear boy, the Aegis Foundation's sole purpose is the preservation of life and the prosperity of humankind. We protect. We build. We heal. Perhaps your operative was not one of mine, but a rogue agent from some other power, using my foundation's name to sow chaos. It was a perfect, plausible denial. Then what are you doing here? Ash demanded. I am here, Silas said, his gaze sweeping across the chamber, as a concerned citizen. I heard whispers of this emergency session, of a panic being stoked by our world monarch. I came to see for myself. And what I see, is a young man with a good heart, but one who is dangerously misguided. He turned his attention to the assembled leaders. For years, we have lived in a state of reactive terror. A spacefaring dragon nearly destroys a city. A titan of the deep tries to drown the world. Beings of immense, world-breaking power treat our planet as their personal playground. And we, humanity, are left to cower and rebuild in their wake. We pray they are benevolent. We hope they do not turn on us. Hope is not a strategy. Faith is not a shield. His voice grew stronger, more passionate, more persuasive. Ash Ketchum believes the answer is partnership. Empathy. Friendship. A noble ideal. A beautiful fairy tale. But a fairy tale will not stop a meteor. It will not contain a God who has decided humanity is a blight. The Aegis Foundation believes in a different path. Not control. Not domination. But balance. We believe that humanity must be the master of its own destiny. We must have the tools to protect ourselves from existential threats, no matter how legendary they may be. He was not a villain giving a monologue. He was a philosopher, an ideologue, giving a sermon. And the congregation was listening. He was preying on their deepest fears, on the memories of every catastrophic legendary event in recent history. He was offering them an alternative to simply hoping for the best: strength, security, mastery. Valerius seized the moment. You see, he said, his voice ringing out. This is the conversation we should be having. Not chasing shadows in the woods, but discussing a real, proactive strategy for global security. A strategy that Mr. Core and the Aegis Foundation seem uniquely equipped to help us forge. The tide had turned completely. Ash stood on his platform, isolated. He had come here to expose a villain and had instead given him the world's biggest stage. He had tried to use the system, and the system, with a quiet, ruthless efficiency, had consumed him. His authority was in tatters. His credibility was shot. He was no longer the heroic monarch, he was a paranoid alarmist. Bianca felt a wave of cold despair wash over her. She watched Silas Core, a man who spoke of balance while his machines tore her brother's soul apart, and she understood. This was a war she could not win with power. Her strength was irrelevant here. This was a war of ideas, and Ash was losing. The Kalos president called for the vote. All in favor of tabling the monarch's motion and forming an exploratory committee in partnership with the Aegis Foundation. Hands went up around the room. One after another. Only Cynthia and Stephen kept their hands down, their faces grim. It was an overwhelming majority. The gavel came down. It sounded like a cell door slamming shut. Ash stood motionless, the roar of his defeat echoing in the sudden silence. He looked from Valerius's triumphant, pragmatic smirk to Silas Core's serene, victorious smile. He had gambled and lost spectacularly. He turned, his face a mask of stone, and walked off the platform. He didn't look at anyone. He just walked, Pikachu a tense, silent ball of fury on his shoulder. Bianca followed, her datapad hanging uselessly at her side. As they passed the gallery, Silas Core spoke to Ash, his voice a low, confidential murmur meant only for him. You have a powerful heart, Ash Ketchum. It is a shame you chain it to the past. The future is for humanity. It is time to let the gods die. Ash didn't stop, didn't look at him. He just kept walking, out of the chamber, out of the light, and back into the shadows. He had entered the gilded cage seeking justice and found only betrayal. He was now an enemy of the state he was meant to lead, and the entire world had just willingly handed the keys to the warden. Chapter 4, the heart of the mountain. The service tunnels beneath Lumio City were no longer a covert entryway, they were a retreat. The cold, damp concrete walls seemed to press in, the distant hum of the city above a mocking reminder of the world that had just turned its back on them. Ash walked with a stiff, furious stride, each step an echo in the echoing corridor. The political humiliation was a fresh, galling wound, far worse than any physical blow. He had been played, masterfully, on a stage he had built himself. Bianca hurried to keep up, her own despair a heavy cloak. She had watched him, so confident and decisive, be systematically dismantled by words. Ash, she started, her voice hesitant. It wasn't your fault. They didn't want to listen. I made them listen to the wrong person, he bit out, his voice raw. He stopped, slamming a fist against a concrete pillar. The sound cracked through the silence. Pikachu flinched. I handed Silas Core a microphone. I gave him a global platform to sell his poison. I was arrogant. I thought the title of monarch meant something. It's just a name. A gilded cage. He leaned his forehead against the cool, rough concrete, his shoulders slumping. The weight of his failure was crushing. He wasn't just responsible for himself and Bianca anymore. By opposing Core publicly, he had painted a target on the backs of his only allies. Cynthia, Stephen. I dragged them into this. Now the Foundation will be watching them, too. From the shadows at the end of the corridor, a figure emerged. It was Cynthia, her long blonde hair a splash of gold in the gloom, her expression unreadable. You didn't drag us anywhere, Ash, she said, her calm voice cutting through his self-recrimination. We made our own choice. Some of us still remember what courage looks like. She walked toward them, her heels clicking softly on the floor. She wasn't just a champion, she was a scholar, a keeper of myths that the modern world had forgotten. The Council has made its decision. They've chosen the illusion of security over the hard truth. They are fools, but they are powerful fools. You cannot fight them on their terms anymore. So what do I do? Ash asked, his voice hollow. Run. Hide. Wait for Core's Foundation to hunt us down. No, Cynthia said, a flicker of her old mentor-like warmth in her eyes. You do what you have always done. You find another way. She held out a small, encrypted data drive. After you called, I didn't stop looking. The heart of the mountain isn't on empty coronet. The texts were mistranslated. It speaks of a place where the world's heartbeat is strongest, a place born of combat and spirit. An island of trials. Ash took the drive, his brow furrowing. An island of trials. A place in the Galar region, Cynthia explained. Secluded, protected by fierce Pokemon and treacherous waters. The ancient Galarian kings called it the Isle of Armor. At its core, legend says, is a nexus of natural energy, a place so pure and potent it can heal a dying land. It's a long shot, Ash. A myth. But it's the only lead we have left that Silas Core doesn't know about. Hope, fragile but fierce, sparked in Ash's chest. A new path. A chance to act, not just react. He looked at Bianca, whose golden eyes were fixed on Cynthia, absorbing every word. Getting there will be difficult, Cynthia warned. Valerius will have the Galar region on high alert. Your face is now that of a political dissident. You are no longer the monarch, you are a wanted man. I've been a wanted man before, Ash said, a ghost of his old, defiant grin returning. It's a lot more fun than being a politician. He turned to Bianca, his resolve hardening once more. It's a risk. Maybe the biggest one yet. But it's our only chance to fix the soul due without the vow. He still couldn't bring himself to fully address the bridegroom ritual. It felt like a line he wasn't ready to cross, a sacrifice he wasn't willing to ask of her, or of himself. He saw the flicker of understanding, and was it disappointment, in her eyes. I trust you, Ash," Bianca said simply. Her faith in him was a tangible force, a shield against the doubt that had been creeping into his heart. "Good," Cynthia said with a firm nod. "I will do what I can to run interference, to draw the council's attention with procedural delays and jurisdictional disputes. It won't buy you much time. Go. Now." The journey to the Isle of Armor was a harrowing testament to their new status as fugitives. They couldn't fly. They couldn't use official channels. They traveled like ghosts, using a network of old contacts and back channels that Ash hadn't needed in years. A ride on a fishing trawler braving a churning sea, a nerve-wracking passage through a crowded port disguised as dockworkers, and a final, desperate flight on the back of Ash's Corviknight under the cover of a raging thunderstorm. They arrived on the island battered, soaked, and exhausted. The Isle of Armor was a wild, untamed paradise, a riot of lush greenery, towering rock formations, and winding rivers. The air was thick with the scent of salt and rain and teeming with life. Powerful Pokémon roamed freely, their cries echoing through the valleys. It felt like a world away from the cold steel and glass of Lumio City. Their goal was a massive, tree-like rock formation that dominated the center of the island, a place the locals called the Tower of Waters. According to Cynthia's data, the entrance to the island's core lay hidden somewhere within its foundations. The trek was a trial. They navigated treacherous cliffs, forded raging rivers, and constantly had to be on guard against the territorial Pokémon that saw them as intruders. But the shared hardship began to forge something new between them. Ash, the seasoned survivalist, moved with a quiet competence, finding safe paths, identifying edible plants, and treating the wild Pokémon with a respect that often diffused conflict before it began. Bianca, in turn, began to change. Her initial fear of the physical world gave way to a burgeoning curiosity. She struggled with the simple act of climbing a steep hill, her muscles burning with an unfamiliar ache, but when she reached the top, the breathtaking view filled her with a sense of accomplishment that was entirely new. She was no longer just a passenger in her human form, she was starting to live in it. One night, they were forced to take shelter in a shallow cave as a torrential downpour turned the landscape into a muddy torrent. They sat in silence for a long time, watching the rain, the only sounds the drumming of water on rock and the crackle of the small, smokeless fire Ash had managed to build. Stripped of their titles and their cosmic crisis, they were just two people in a cave, trying to stay warm. "I never knew," Bianca said softly, her gaze lost in the flames, "that being cold could feel good." Ash looked at her, confused. "Good?" "The warmth from the fire," she explained, holding her hands out to it. "You can't appreciate it unless you felt the cold. As Latias, I am never hot or cold. I just am. This body, it feels everything. The ache in my legs from walking, the sting of the wind, the hunger in my stomach. It is all so loud. But the relief when the ache stops, the taste of water when you are thirsty, it's a kind of music." Ash listened, fascinated. He had never considered the basic sensations of life to be anything special. They were just facts. To her, they were revelations. "I'm sorry," he said suddenly. She looked at him, her brow furrowed. "For what?" "For all of this," he gestured vaguely at the cave, the rain, their whole desperate situation. "For dragging you through the mud, for making you cold and hungry. For my plan failing so badly. I promised to protect you, and I feel like all I've done is make you a target." "You did protect me," she said, her golden eyes serious. "In the forest. You stood between me and Spectre when I was helpless. You didn't run. And in that chamber, you spoke for me when I had no voice. You lost, but you fought for me. That is a kind of protection my brother could never have given me." A comfortable silence fell between them. The barrier of legendary Pokémon and world monarch was dissolving, replaced by a simple, human connection. "I am afraid, Ash," she confessed, her voice barely a whisper. The admission seemed to cost her a great deal. Me too, he admitted, the words tasting strange on his tongue. He was the hero, the one who was never afraid. But it was the truth. I'm afraid of what this foundation is capable of. I'm afraid of what they want. And I'm afraid of what this vow will do to you. To us. The lore says it is a fusion, she said, finally addressing the subject head-on. That our souls will be woven together. I don't know what that means. I don't know if I will still exist. I don't want to lose myself. And I don't want to force a destiny on you that you did not choose. You're not forcing it, he said, meeting her gaze. His promise to protect her, which had started as a duty to a friend, had quietly, imperceptibly, become something more. He was no longer just trying to save a legendary Pokémon. He was trying to save Bianca. The person sitting across from him, who felt the cold and appreciated the warmth of a fire. Whatever happens, we're choosing it. Together. But if there's another way, a way that doesn't risk you. I have to try it. The sincerity in his voice was undeniable. In that moment, in that rain-swept cave, the Ian's vow shifted from a mystical obligation to a deeply personal, terrifying, and profound choice. The bond between them had become real. After 2 more days of grueling travel, they found it. Behind a waterfall that cascaded down the side of the Tower of Waters was a hidden opening, a passage leading deep into the heart of the island. The air that flowed out was cool and pulsed with a faint, rhythmic energy, like a slow, deep heartbeat. The passage opened into a colossal cavern, a sight that stole their breath. The entire cavern was filled with a single, massive crystal, easily the size of a stadium. It pulsed with a soft, internal, blue-white light, the source of the heartbeat they had felt. The walls of the cavern were covered in ancient, intricate carvings, the same prehistoric script Ash had seen in his vision from Latios. This is it, Bianca whispered, her voice filled with awe. The heart of the island. She walked toward the great crystal, her hand outstretched. As she drew closer, the soul dew, which she carried in a protective satchel Ash had fashioned, began to glow faintly, resonating with the crystal's immense energy. It can heal it, she breathed, a joyous, disbelieving laugh escaping her. The energy here, it's pure life force. It can recharge the dew. Ash watched, a wave of relief washing over him. This was it. The alternative. They wouldn't need the vow. But as Bianca reached the crystal, she began to read the carvings on the wall beside it, her expression shifting from joy to horror. What is it? Ash asked, hurrying to her side. It's a warning, she said, her voice trembling. She traced a finger over a carving that depicted the great crystal, with lines of energy flowing from it into a smaller orb, clearly representing the soul dew. But behind the crystal, the carving showed an island that was withered and dead, its trees skeletal, its rivers dry. The crystal isn't a generator, she said, her hope crumbling into dust. It's a reservoir. It holds the life force of the entire Isle of Armor. To heal the soul dew with its power, it would mean taking that life force. It would drain the crystal, and the island would die. Its ecosystem, all the Pokémon that live here, they would perish. The terrible weight of the choice crashed down on them. They had found their miracle, and it came with an impossible price. Save Latios and her lineage, or save this entire, vibrant island. It was a choice between 2 kinds of extinction. No, Ash said, his voice a low growl of defiance. I don't accept that. He stared at the crystal, then at the dying soul dew in its satchel. He thought of the Pokémon they had seen on their journey here, the powerful, wild creatures living in this paradise. He thought of Latios, fading into nothingness in a lonely garden. There had to be another way. There was always another way. He looked at Bianca, a desperate, brilliant idea forming in his mind. An idea born of their conversation in the cave, of her description of his aura, of the sensory link they had shared in the forest. You said my aura was a nexus, he said, his voice urgent. A sun. And you are a being of immense psychic and draconic energy. The crystal isn't the problem. The soul dew isn't the problem. The problem is they can't connect. We're trying to force one to feed the other. He walked to the crystal, placing his palm flat against its cool, vibrating surface. What if we don't take from it? What if we ask for its help? He closed his eyes, focusing his will, drawing on the deep well of empathy that was his greatest strength. He didn't try to pull energy from the crystal. He pushed his own aura into it. A gentle, respectful offering. He projected not a demand for power, but a plea for connection. He showed the crystal the image of the dying soul dew, the fading Latios, the grief-stricken Bianca. He showed it the life on the island, and his refusal to sacrifice it. He asked it to share, not to give. Bianca watched, stunned, as a faint blue light began to glow from Ash's hand, his aura visibly interacting with the crystal's energy. She understood what he was trying to do. He was trying to be a bridge. And a bridge needs support on both sides. She moved to stand beside him, taking the cloudy soul dew from its satchel. She placed her own hands on the great crystal, next to his. She didn't try to project thoughts or images. She simply opened her soul, letting her pure Ian energy flow, not with the desperation to take, but with the hope to connect. She reached out with her other hand and took his. The moment their skin touched, the circuit was complete. His human aura, a brilliant, fiery sun of emotion, will, and connection, merged with her Ian soul, a vast, celestial river of psychic, draconic, and ancient energy. The crystal, responding to their selfless, unified intent, did not just give them power. It became a conduit, a massive amplifier. Energy, pure and overwhelming, surged through them. It wasn't a violent, tearing force, but a harmonious, overwhelming flood. Ash saw the universe in flashes of light, the birth of stars, the flow of time, the intricate dance of life and spirit. Bianca felt the grounding, anchoring power of a single, powerful human heart, the fierce loyalty and unwavering love Ash had for his friends, for his Pokémon, for the world. Together, they channeled that amplified, harmonious energy. It flowed from the crystal, through their joined hands, and into the dim, cloudy orb of the soul dew. The dew did not just brighten. It ignited. The murky gray color was burned away, replaced by a brilliant, dazzling light, a miniature sun glowing with a power greater than it had ever possessed. Miles away, in a dying garden in Alto Mare, a translucent, flickering form suddenly solidified, a healthy, powerful Latios looking around in stunned disbelief as strength flooded back into him. They had done it. They hadn't drained the crystal. They hadn't destroyed the island. They had created a bridge between two sources of life, and in doing so, healed one without harming the other. The flow of energy subsided. Ash and Bianca stumbled back, gasping, their hands still joined. The cavern was filled with the brilliant, healthy light of the restored soul dew. The great crystal pulsed with a steady, strong rhythm, its energy undiminished. They had found a third path. In the breathless silence that followed, they looked at each other, truly seeing one another for the first time. They had shared more than just energy. They had shared their very essences, their deepest selves. He had felt the cosmic loneliness of her existence. She had felt the fierce, burning passion of his heart. The Ian vow. They both understood it now. It was never a ritual. It was never about a bridegroom or a forced sacrifice. It was this. This perfect, willing, selfless fusion of heart and soul, born not of desperation, but of trust and affection. Tears welled in Bianca's eyes, not of sorrow, but of overwhelming, profound relief and revelation. The demand she had made in the garden, born of fear and ancient, misunderstood lore, seemed like a lifetime ago. Ash, she whispered, her voice thick with emotion, her grip on his hand tightening. I don't demand anything anymore. She looked at him, her heart, both human and Ian, laid bare. Now. I'm just asking. Ash looked at her, at the tears on her face, at the brilliant, life-giving glow of the soul dew in her hands, at their still joined hands. The fear, the doubt, the weight of the world, it all melted away, replaced by a simple, undeniable clarity. His promise to protect her had blossomed into something he hadn't expected, something that felt as natural and essential as breathing. He squeezed her hand, a slow, warm smile spreading across his face. He knew his answer. He had known it for some time. Chapter 5, The Fall of the Titan. The brilliant, life-giving light of the restored soul dew filled the crystal cavern, a beacon of hope in the heart of the mountain. For a fleeting moment, all was right with the world. Ash and Bianca stood in the warm glow, their hands still joined, a silent understanding passing between them that was deeper than any words. They had faced an impossible choice and forged a third path, not through power, but through partnership. The relief was a heady, intoxicating thing. But the world outside their sanctuary had not stopped turning. High in the stratosphere, aboard the flying fortress known as the Bastion, Silas Core watched a shimmering holographic display. The screen showed a map of the world, traced with lines of energy that he alone could see. For days, he had been tracking a specific signature, the faint, decaying energy of the Alto Mare Soul Dew. It had been a dying star, a patient target. Then, moments ago, it had not just stabilized. It had flared. The dim, flickering point of light on his map had erupted into a brilliant, steady sun, its energy signature purer and more powerful than before. Impossible, Silas murmured, his calm demeanor cracking for the first time. He zoomed in on the data stream. The energy wasn't just restored, it was refined, harmonized. It now contained two distinct, interwoven signatures, the familiar Ian frequency, and another he recognized with a jolt of clinical fury. It was the unique, vibrant aura of Ash Ketchum. Integration, he breathed, the word a curse. They didn't just find a power source. They synergized. A subordinate, a woman in a crisp, white uniform, approached, her expression nervous. "Sir. We've lost Spectre's deep cover surveillance on Champion Cynthia. She's initiated a full-scale encrypted lockdown of the Sinnoh League's internal network. We're blind." Silas didn't look at her. His pale blue eyes were fixed on the glowing dot of the restored soul dew. Ash Ketchum was no longer just a nuisance, an idealistic boy with a god complex. He was an active, unpredictable variable capable of invalidating years of research. His ability to form bonds wasn't a fairy tale, it was a quantifiable, power-multiplying phenomenon. He was a threat that could not be allowed to grow. "He has to be drawn out," Silas said, his voice regaining its cold composure. "He believes he's won. He's feeling confident, heroic. We will use that against him. We will create a problem that only a hero would dare to solve." He turned to his subordinate, his eyes alight with a terrifying, strategic brilliance. "Mobilize the resonance team. Target, Sector Gamma 7, the slumbering titan near Moss Deep City. I want a full-scale awakening. And get me Champion Valerius." It's time he proved his commitment to a secure future. The peace on the Isle of Armor was shattered by the frantic chirping of Ash's comms unit. He and Bianca were just emerging from the cavern, blinking in the bright afternoon sun, when the sound cut through the air. It was a global emergency broadcast, a signal that overrode all personal settings. Ash flipped it open. The screen showed a live news feed from Moss Deep City. The image was chaos. The sea was churning, and from its depths, a colossal figure was rising. Its body was a patchwork of rock and glowing moss, its form vaguely humanoid but on a scale that defied comprehension. 3 glowing lights on its head, blue, red, and silver, flashed with a malevolent energy. "Regigigas," Ash breathed, his blood running cold. The Titan, a being of immense, world-shaping power, was not just awake, it was enraged. It lumbered toward the city, its every step a localized earthquake. It swiped a massive, stone arm, and a section of the Moss Deep Space Center's launch gantry crumpled like a tin can. Panic filled the streets. The broadcast was a cacophony of sirens and screams. "Reports are just coming in," a frantic reporter's voice crackled from the comms. "The legendary Pokemon Regigigas has awakened and appears to be on a destructive rampage. The Hoenn League has issued a Class A threat alert. Where is the World Monarch?" The question hung in the air, a direct challenge. A gauntlet thrown down for the entire world to see. Ash looked at Bianca. The joy of their victory in the cavern felt a lifetime away. Her face was pale, her golden eyes wide with horror as she watched the destruction. "It's a trap," she said, her voice tight. "Ash, it has to be." "I know," he said, his gaze fixed on the screen, on the terrified civilians running for their lives. "But they're not the ones in danger right now. Those people are." His jaw was set like stone. He was the world monarch. This was his responsibility. Trap or not, he could not stand by and watch a city be destroyed. It was the core of who he was. Silas Core knew that, and he was exploiting it perfectly. "Charizard!" Ash roared. The fire dragon, who had been resting nearby, was on his feet in an instant, letting out a challenging bellow. "We're going to Moss Deep. Now!" He leaped onto Charizard's back, then reached down for Bianca. "Come on. I need you." She hesitated for only a second, then took his hand and swung up behind him. She knew it was a trap. But she also knew him. She wouldn't let him face it alone. They arrived over Moss Deep City to a scene of escalating devastation. Regigigas was now fully on land, moving with a slow, inexorable purpose toward the city's power grid. Its eyes glowed with a furious, unnatural light. Hoenn League trainers were trying to mount a defense, a swarm of Flygon and Salamence launching futile dragon pulses that splashed harmlessly against the Titan's rock and magma hide. Ash didn't hesitate. "Charizard, straight down. Pikachu, get ready." They dove, a streak of orange and black against the sky. "Bianca," Ash shouted over the wind. "Focus on the people. Use your power to clear evacuation routes, shield anyone who's trapped. Don't engage the Titan." "Understood," she yelled back. As they neared the ground, Bianca leaped from Charizard's back. She didn't fall. She hovered, a faint psychic aura shimmering around her, and shot off toward a collapsing overpass where cars were trapped. Ash and Charizard landed hard in the main plaza, directly in Regigigas's path. The ground shook. The Titan paused, its three glowing eyes fixing on the comparatively minuscule figures before it. "Regigigas!" Ash yelled, projecting his voice with his own aura, trying to cut through its rage. "Listen to me. You're being controlled. Fight it." The Titan responded with a guttural roar that shattered every window for half a mile. It raised a fist the size of a house and brought it down. "Sceptile, let's go." Ash threw the Pokeball. The forest Pokemon burst out, landing in a low crouch. "Leaf Blade, on its legs. Try to slow it down." "Pikachu, aim for the glowing marks on its shoulders. They look like energy regulators." "Charizard, Dragon Claw. Distract it from above." The battle began. It wasn't a contest of power, it was a desperate attempt at containment. Sceptile was a green blur, its leaf blade striking Regigigas's ankles with explosive force, but only succeeding in chipping off small chunks of rock. Pikachu scaled a nearby skyscraper, firing precise thunderbolts at the glowing sigils on the Titan's shoulders, causing it to flinch in annoyance. Charizard soared above, raking its claws across the giant's back, drawing its attention skyward. Ash was the nerve center, coordinating their every move. He saw every angle, every opening, every danger. He and his Pokemon moved as one, a dance of desperate heroism. Miles away, Bianca was a guardian angel, her psychic power forming shimmering pink barriers that deflected falling debris, lifting rubble to free trapped families, her thoughts a soothing balm to the panicked crowds. They were a perfect team, a symphony of action and support. Slowly, painstakingly, it was working. They weren't hurting Regigigas, but they were managing it. They were guiding its rampage away from the most populated areas, buying precious time for the evacuation. Ash could feel the Titan's rage. It was a blind, chaotic fury, not a malicious intent. He was right. It was being controlled. Just a little more, he yelled, sweat pouring down his face. We just need to break its focus. He was about to call for a final, coordinated push when a new presence entered the battlefield. A sleek, silver aircraft, the official jet of the Galar champion, streaked overhead. From it, 3 figures descended. A massive, gleaming Duraludon. A ghostly, stealth bomber Dragapult. And champion Valerius, his silver hair immaculate even in the chaos, landing as gracefully as a Pokémon. Looks like you could use a hand, Ash, Valerius called out, a confident smirk on his face. Couldn't let you have all the fun. For a split second, Ash felt a surge of relief. Valerius was arrogant, but he was a champion. His power was undeniable. With the two of them working together. Valerius, thank you. Ash shouted. We need to break the psychic control. Aim for the head, try to disrupt its concentration. My thoughts exactly, Valerius said. Duraludon, flash cannon. Dragapult, dragon darts. The 2 Galar Pokémon unleashed a devastating barrage. Duraludon's blast of pure steel energy slammed into Regigigas's chest, making the Titan stagger back. Dragapult's phantom missile struck its head, causing it to roar in pain and fury. The attack drew the Titan's full, undivided attention. It turned its glowing eyes on Valerius's team, forgetting all about Ash. It's working. Ash yelled, seeing the opening. Pikachu, now. Full power. Volt tackle, straight for the central eye. Pikachu became a golden thunderbolt, rocketing up the Titan's body, aimed at the source of its maddened gaze. This was it. The final blow to break the spell. And then, the world turned upside down. As Pikachu neared his target, a shadowy missile shot out of nowhere. A dragon dart from Valerius's Dragapult. It didn't strike Regigigas. It struck Pikachu. The electric mouse cried out in pain and shock, his volt tackle dissipating as he was knocked out of the air. He fell, a limp yellow shape, toward the ground. At the same instant, Duraludon, who was supposed to be firing another flash cannon at Regigigas, swiveled its metallic body. A beam of energy, crackling and dark, shot out. Not a flash cannon. A dark pulse. It struck Ash's Sceptile, who was still hacking away at the Titan's legs, sending him flying into the side of a building. What are you doing? Ash screamed, his mind reeling in confusion and horror. Charizard, seeing Pikachu fall, dove to catch his friend. But Valerius was ready. Duraludon, he commanded, his voice suddenly cold as ice. Stone Edge. Pillars of jagged rock erupted from the ground, a cage of stone that shot up around Charizard, blocking his path. He crashed into the unexpected barrier with a sickening thud. The betrayal was so sudden, so absolute, it was incomprehensible. Ash stood frozen for a single, heart-stopping second, watching his Pokémon being taken down one by one, not by the Titan, but by his supposed ally. In that moment of distraction, Regigigas, now completely ignored, turned its attention back to him. It raised its massive foot. A shimmering pink barrier materialized in front of Ash, absorbing the Titan's stomp with a deafening crack. The ground beneath him shattered, but he was unharmed. Bianca hovered before him, her face a mask of furious disbelief, her arms outstretched. Above them, the sky darkened. A fleet of sleek, black ships, the same matte alloy as Spectre's drone, decloaked from above the clouds. They were silent, menacing, their forms blotting out the sun. The Aegis Foundation had arrived. Massive cables, tipped with humming energy claws, fired from the ships. They latched onto the confused and injured Regigigas, pumping a powerful sedative energy into its body. The Titan shuddered, its furious glow dimming, and it slowly, ponderously, sank to its knees, its rampage over. Ash stared, his heart pounding with a cold, sickening rhythm. The enraged Titan. The desperate battle. The heroic rescue. It was all a stage play. A meticulously choreographed performance designed for one purpose, to trap him and discredit him. Valerius recalled his Pokémon, his expression no longer one of rivalry, but of cold, pitying superiority. He walked toward the stunned Ash, his footsteps crunching on the rubble. "You still don't get it, do you, Ash?" he said, his voice calm amidst the wreckage. "You see chaos. An uncontrollable monster that needs to be befriended. I see an unstable variable. A power source that needs to be contained and regulated before it hurts someone. You work for them," Ash whispered, the words tasting like ash in his mouth. "I work for the future," Valerius corrected him. "A future where we don't have to rely on the whims of ancient beasts. Silas Core showed me that. The Aegis Foundation offers control. It offers order. It isn't evil, Ash. It's necessary." As if on cue, Silas Core's face appeared on every remaining public screen in the city, broadcast from the bridge of the bastion. He looked calm, authoritative, heroic. The feed showed the captured, now docile Regigigas being secured by the Aegis ships. "Citizens of the world," Silas's voice boomed, filled with grave reassurance. Today, disaster was averted. A legendary Titan, driven to madness, threatened the city of Moss Deep. Our world monarch, Ash Ketchum, fought bravely, but his methods proved insufficient against a threat of this magnitude. The screen split, showing a carefully edited clip of Ash's team being thrown around by Regigigas, then cutting to Valerius's Pokémon landing decisive blows, and finally to the Aegis ships, saving the day. "It is with a heavy heart," Silas continued, "that we must recognize the limits of our old ways. Partnership is a noble goal, but it is not a shield. Today, the Aegis Foundation, in cooperation with forward-thinking leaders like Champion Valerius, demonstrated a new path. A path of strength, of control, of security. The Titan is contained. The city is safe. We will ensure such a threat never happens again." It was the final move in his political masterstroke. He had not only defeated Ash, he had turned the world against him, using Ash's own heroism as the weapon. He had manufactured a crisis, provided the solution, and emerged as the world's savior. Ash stood amidst the ruins of his reputation, the rubble of his ideals. His Pokémon were injured. His friend had betrayed him. His enemy had won a total, public, and undeniable victory. He looked up at the Aegis fleet, at the captured, humiliated form of Regigigas being prepared for transport. They hadn't just defeated a Titan. They had taken a god prisoner. Bianca landed beside him, her psychic energy crackling with a rage so pure it was almost visible. She looked at Valerius, her golden eyes burning with a hatred that was terrifying to behold. "Run, hero," Valerius said to Ash with a final, dismissive sneer. He turned and walked away, leaving them in the ruins. The fall was complete. Ash was no longer the world monarch. He was a relic, a failed ideal. And the Aegis Foundation, once a shadowy threat, now stood in the light, hailed as the protectors of a new world order. The stakes were no longer just personal. They were global. And they had just lost the first major battle of the war. Chapter 6, The Unseen Alliance. The retreat was a blur of shame and desperation. Bianca, her rage a burning psychic shield, teleported them away from the ruins of Moss Deep City in a flash of pink light. They reappeared not in a safe house or a hidden base, but in a place of primal, mythic power, a place Cynthia had given Ash as a final, desperate fallback. The interior of the Tree of Beginning. The cavernous space was breathtaking, a cathedral of living crystal and rock. A central, colossal crystal pillar, the heart of the tree, pulsed with a gentle, rhythmic light, casting shifting patterns across the walls. The air was pure, humming with an energy so potent it felt like stepping into the world's soul. It was a sanctuary, a place so deeply infused with the planet's life force, with aura, that it was effectively invisible to any form of technological surveillance. The Aegis Foundation could scan the entire planet, and this place would register as nothing more than a solid mountain. Ash slid to his knees the moment they materialized, the adrenaline of the battle draining away to leave a cold, hollow ache. He immediately began tending to his Pokémon. Pikachu was conscious but weak, the dark energy from Dragapult's attack leaving him shivering. Sceptile's scales were cracked and bruised. Charizard, having crashed into Valerius's rock cage, had a strained wing. Ash worked with a grim, focused silence, applying salves and potions from his pack, his hands steady even as his world crumbled. Each wince of pain from his partners was a fresh twist of the knife of Valerius's betrayal. Bianca stood guard, her back to him, her psychic senses extended like a net around the sanctuary. The rage she had felt in Moss Deep had cooled into a hard, diamond-like resolve. She had seen the depths of human perfidy, the cold logic of Silas Core and Valerius. But she had also seen Ash, on his knees, his first thought not for his own defeat, but for the well-being of his friends. The contrast was stark, absolute. Her choice had not been a mistake. "They are celebrating him," she said, her voice a low murmur. She was tapping into the global news feeds, not with technology, but by sensing the collective emotional consciousness of the world. Silas Core. They call him a visionary. A savior. Valerius is the pragmatic hero. And you, they are calling you a reckless liability. Ash didn't look up from wrapping a bandage around Sceptile's arm. "Let them," he said, his voice tight. "Words are cheap. They have Regigigas. I can't even imagine what they're doing to it." He finished his work and sat back on his heels, finally allowing the full weight of his defeat to settle over him. He had been so sure. So sure he could outwit them, expose them. Instead, he had played directly into their hands, becoming a pawn in their global power play. His name, once a symbol of hope and unity, was now a cautionary tale. "I can't do this alone," he admitted, the words tasting like failure. "He has champions, governments, the media, all I have are injured Pokémon and a price on my head." As if in answer, a presence announced itself at the edge of the cavern. It was not a physical arrival, but a psychic one, a mind of immense power and cold, piercing intellect, so different from Bianca's warm, draconic energy. "You have finally realized the arrogance of your species is not limited to petty criminals and power-hungry mobsters." A figure coalesced from the shadows near the entrance. Tall, imposing, its feline features set in a permanent scowl of disdain. Mutwo. He floated a few inches off the ground, his arms crossed, his purple eyes glowing with a formidable light. He looked at Ash, his gaze sweeping over the injured Pokémon, and then to Bianca, a flicker of grudging respect in his eyes. "I felt the psychic scream of the Titan being caged," Mutwo said, his telepathic voice echoing in the cavern. "And I felt the wave of manufactured public adoration that followed. A nauseating spectacle. This Aegis Foundation seeks to do to all of us what my creators once sought to do to me, to turn the divine into a tool, a battery. I will not allow it." Before Ash could even process the arrival of his most powerful and volatile ally, another disturbance rippled through the sanctuary. The great crystal at the center of the tree began to glow brighter, its light resonating with a deep, oceanic hum. The air grew heavy, thick with the scent of salt and ozone. A new voice, ancient and melodic as the tides, filled their minds. It was not sharp like Mutwo's, but vast, a consciousness that felt as large as the sea itself. "The balance is broken. A wound has been carved into the world's flesh. The song of the deep is muted, replaced by a discordant hum of artifice." From the crystalline floor of the cavern, a whirlpool of silver light formed. It rose, taking the shape of a magnificent winged creature, its form shimmering with the power of the ocean. Lugia, the guardian of the seas, materialized before them, its wise, ancient eyes fixing on Ash. The capture of the land titan has created a dead zone, Lugia projected, its thoughts a calming current against Mutwo's psychic storm. A place where the planet's life force is being artificially suppressed, siphoned. This foundation does not just capture our bodies, it starves our spirits. If they are not stopped, the world will wither. Ash stared, dumbfounded. Mutwo and Lugia. Two of the most powerful and reclusive beings on the planet, appearing here, in his darkest hour. The blatant, world-altering capture of Regigigas had been a silent alarm, a call to arms for those who protected the natural order. The arrivals weren't over. The sound of running footsteps echoed from the tunnel leading out. Two figures emerged into the light of the crystal. One was a tall, dark-skinned man with a calm, steady demeanor, carrying a geological surveyor's pack. The other was a fiery redhead in practical, athletic gear, her expression a mixture of worry and fierce determination. "Brock! Misty!" Ash exclaimed, scrambling to his feet. "We came as soon as we saw the news," Misty said, her eyes flashing with anger. "That snake, Latias. I never trusted him. Leaving you like that." "The broadcast was a farce," Brock added, his voice grave. He knelt, taking a look at Pikachu. He was no longer just a gym leader, he was one of the world's leading Pokémon professors, his specialty the study of aura and its interaction with Pokémon physiology. "I saw the energy readings on the Dark Pulse Duraludin used. It was laced with a suppressing agent, designed to cause aura fatigue. They weren't just trying to knock your Pokémon out, they were trying to cripple their connection to you." In the space of a few minutes, Ash's situation had been completely transformed. He was no longer a lone fugitive. He was the center of a gathering storm, a clandestine alliance of humans and gods, all united by a common enemy. Cynthia arrived last, walking in with a quiet, grim purpose. "The council is in lockdown," she reported. "They've officially branded you a rogue element. They've given the Aegis Foundation full authority to contain you. Valerius is leading the manhunt." She looked around the cavern, at the assembled legends and loyal friends. "It seems you have more important allies than politicians anyway." This was it. The turning point. Humbled by his defeat, Ash felt a new kind of strength welling up inside him. It wasn't the arrogant confidence of the monarch, but the steady resolve of a leader who knew he couldn't do it alone. He had to command this room. He had to forge this disparate group into a weapon. "All right," he said, his voice cutting through the tension. All eyes, human and legendary, turned to him. "This is our council of war. We know what the Aegis Foundation can do. Now we need to figure out how they do it, and how we can tear it all down." The cavern became a command center. They pooled their knowledge, each member of the unlikely alliance bringing a crucial piece of the puzzle. It was a chapter not of frantic action, but of intense, gripping strategy. Mutwo, his psychic power a scalpel, began to probe the edges of the global network. Their systems are shielded, but not perfectly. They think in straight lines, in firewalls and encryption. They do not account for a mind that can be everywhere at once. They have a central command hub, a mobile fortress. The Bastion. It is currently moving toward the Unova region. And its power source, it is the stolen life force of Regigigas. Lugia closed its eyes, its consciousness sinking deep into the planet's energy field. The dead zones are created by a network of satellites. They project a field that disrupts the flow of natural energy, making legendary Pokémon weaker, more vulnerable. This is how they subdued the Titan so easily. The sonic device was just a trigger, the field was the cage. Brock, meanwhile, was analyzing the fragments of Spectre's temporal device that Ash had collected, along with the data from his own analysis of the Moss Deep broadcast. This technology is all interconnected. The power source is a form of stabilized singularity, miniaturized. It's decades, maybe centuries, ahead of anything we have. But it has a weakness. It requires a massive energy cost to maintain stability. If we could disrupt the power source, the whole system would collapse. Misty, the tactical expert on large-scale threats, cross-referenced the satellite network with shipping lanes and known oceanic currents. Their supply lines. They have to resupply that fortress, no matter how advanced it is. They have to have ground-based support facilities. If we can find them, we can cut the head off the snake. As they worked, a quiet but powerful dynamic was playing out at the center of it all. Bianca stayed by Ash's side, a silent, supportive presence. When his frustration mounted, she would place a calming hand on his arm. When he struggled to articulate a complex strategic thought, she would help him find the words, her mind subtly bridging the gap between his intuition and his expression. She was no longer just his ward, she was his partner in every sense of the word. During a brief lull in the planning, they stood together near the heart of the tree, watching the light pulse. "You're not alone anymore," she said softly. "We're not," he corrected her, looking at their strange, powerful army. He then turned to her, his expression serious. "Bianca, about the vow. After what happened in the cavern. I understand it now. It's not a ritual we have to perform. It's a choice. And I want to make that choice. With you. Not because we have to, but because I want to." His confession, simple and direct, hung in the air. This was not the time for grand romance, but for a declaration of a bond forged in fire and crisis. It was a commitment, an acceptance of a shared future, whatever that might look like. She met his gaze, her golden eyes shining with an emotion so profound it needed no words. She simply nodded, a single, decisive gesture of acceptance. "When this is over," she said, her voice filled with quiet promise. The decision was made. Their bond, already tested and proven, was now unbreakable, a foundation of power that Silas Core's machines could never quantify. With renewed purpose, Ash turned back to the War Council. The pieces were coming together. They had the enemy's location, their methods, their weakness. Now, they needed a plan. "We can't just attack the bastion head-on," Ash said, thinking aloud. "It's what they'll expect. We'll be flying right into their kill zone, right into the heart of their dampening field." "A direct assault is crude," Mutwo agreed. "But a diversion is not. The Foundation believes its only true threats are beings of our caliber. Let us give them what they expect." A two-pronged plan began to form, a daring, high-stakes gambit. "Mutwo, Lugia," Ash commanded, his voice ringing with newfound authority. "You will lead the diversion. You'll attack the bastion, but from outside the range of their main weapons. Draw their attention. Make them scramble their elite forces. Make them think that gods are fighting on our terms. While their eyes are in the sky," Cynthia added, catching on immediately, "a small, elite team can infiltrate the bastion itself." "Exactly," Ash said, his eyes alight with a dangerous fire. "I'll lead the strike team. Lucario, Greninja, and Pikachu. Speed, stealth, and power. Our objective, get to the core and free Regigigas. If we can cut off their power, the bastion is just a falling rock." "And me?" Bianca asked, stepping forward. Ash looked at her. The thought of putting her in the heart of the enemy fortress was terrifying. But he also knew he couldn't succeed without her. Her senses, their shared connection, had been the deciding factor against Spectre. "You're with me," he said, his voice firm. "You're our compass. You're our shield. You're the only one who can guide us through their psychic defenses." The plan was set. The alliance was forged. The roles were assigned. They stood together in the light of the tree of beginning, two humans who had never given up, a champion who defied the law, a legendary of the mind, a legend of the sea, and a girl who was learning what it meant to have a human heart. Ash was no longer just a trainer, a monarch, or a fugitive. He was the commander of the last, best hope for the world's natural order. He looked at the determined faces around him, then at Bianca, and felt a surge of pure, unshakable resolve. They wanted a war, Ash said, his voice low and hard. Let's give them one. Chapter 7, The God-Killer's Heart. The infiltration. The Aegis headquarters is a colossal flying fortress, a technological marvel called the Bastion, powered by the captured and tormented Regigigas. Ash's strike team, consisting of himself, Bianca, Lucario, and Greninja, uses Mew's teleportation abilities to bypass the outer defenses and get inside. A fortress of ideology, the interior is sterile, white, and efficient. It's a temple to human ingenuity. They face elite Aegis soldiers armed with psionically shielded armor and Pokémon specifically bred and trained to fight in perfect, emotionless sync. The fights are tactical and brutal, forcing Ash to use every ounce of his strategic skill. Confronting the rival, as they near the core, their path is blocked by Valerius. The duel between Ash and Valerius is the centerpiece of the chapter. It's a champion-level battle of the highest order, but it's also a clash of ideals. Valerius's Duraludon and Dragapult versus Ash's Pikachu and Lucario. Every command, every counter, is laced with their conflicting philosophies. You fight for a fairy tale, Ash. Valerius yells. I fight for a future where children don't have to fear the sky falling. The bond as a weapon, Ash, now fully in sync with Bianca's senses, fights on a level Valerius cannot comprehend. He doesn't just predict moves, he feels the intent behind them. He defeats Valerius not by overpowering him, but by outthinking and outfeeling him, proving that his emotional connection to his Pokémon is a greater strength than Valerius's cold logic. The ultimate weapon, defeated, a shaken Valerius reveals Silas Core's true goal. He wasn't just capturing legendaries. He was building the Nexus engine, a machine designed to fire a beam of pure, weaponized human ambition at the Hall of Origin itself. His goal is not to control Arceus, but to sever its connection to their dimension, effectively unmaking divine power and leaving humanity as the supreme force in the universe. The Chapter 8, The Vow. At the end of all things, the final confrontation, Ash and Bianca burst into the Nexus engine's chamber. Silas Core stands before a swirling vortex of energy, the machine powered by Regigigas' life force. He is calm, resolute, a fanatic utterly convinced of his righteousness. He gives a final, chilling speech about freeing humanity from the cosmic tyranny of gods. Apocalyptic battle, the final battle begins. Ash's entire team fights to free Regigigas and stop the machine. Outside, Lugia, Mutwo, and the other legendaries assault the Bastion. Silas is protected by a personal shield and an army of advanced drones. The scale is immense. The Ian vow, the machine is too powerful, they can't stop it from the outside. The firing sequence is irreversible. In a moment of quiet clarity amidst the chaos, Ash and Bianca look at each other. This is the moment. There is no other way. They perform the Ian vow, not as a ritual, but as a pure act of love and sacrifice. They willingly merge their essences. A new being, the transformation is spectacular. They don't just disappear. Ash and Bianca become a single being of incandescent light, a perfect synthesis of human spirit and Ian soul, retaining both their consciousnesses. This new being possesses power on a scale previously unimaginable. The climax, this new entity, Ash/Latias, phases through the Nexus engine's shields and directly confronts the energy vortex. They don't destroy it, they absorb it. They take the full, concentrated power of the God-Killer weapon into themselves, along with the raw life force of Regigigas, saving it. The Bastion, its power source gone, begins to fall from the sky. A new dawn, the Ash/Latias entity uses its immense power to safely lower the fortress into the ocean, saving everyone aboard, including a stunned Silas Core and Valerius. As the sun rises, the light subsides. Ash and Bianca stand together on the shore, separate but forever changed. They are still themselves, but now share a single soul, able to merge at will. Their bond has not just saved the world, it has created something entirely new. The end. Thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video.